Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Industrial Equipment News and Manufacturing.net, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Each week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live. Jeff, how you doing this week?
Good. For some reason, my back is just all of a sudden tightened up. So if you see me like dancing over here, it's just trying to like stretch it out.
Trying to figure out where it's
Need
coming
a
from.
foam roller for the studio?
I mean, I could, with the introduction of the foam roller, Anna, I feel like I could use one in nearly every room I occupy in my life.
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm.
Just, it was actually, my wife went on a business trip, and she's like, should I or shouldn't I? Because she could drive to it. And she got home, she's like, I should have brought the foam roller. How are you feeling, Anna?
Pretty good, I think. Was out sick earlier this week, but I'm kind of back in business, I believe. But later in the episode, if I feel like I have a fever, remind me that it's just that I'm in the studio and it's like 40 degrees hotter than any other room.
That's right. It's you're just cooking in here. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our new sponsor, Cyolo. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Cyolo. As manufacturers have become more agile and efficient through digitalization, greater IT/OT connectivity, and reliance on third-party vendors, they've inadvertently created more opportunities for hackers to wreak havoc. To minimize the chance of bad actors gaining access to critical OT assets, the right Secure Remote Access, or SRA, strategy and solution can enable the many benefits of Industry 4.0 without the added risk of a $1 million cyber attack. I feel like that should be like multi-million-dollar cyber attack with everything we've seen lately. This new guide compiles the 8 most important considerations in choosing the most effective SRA solution for your OT environment. There's a link to download the guide in the live chat and in the body copy. Our first story this week: lumber producer's plant catches fire amid bankruptcy and layoffs. On September 8th, a fire broke out at a Pennsylvania plant owned by hardwood lumber producer Weber. The 84-year-old company's headquarters in Lebanon was ablaze for nearly 12 hours and took 1 million gallons of water to put out. No one was injured, and a maintenance worker inside at the time of the fire got out in time. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Local fire officials said the site may contain the most combustible materials in a single building in the entire state of Pennsylvania, and that's just not good. Weber has fought numerous fires at the site in May 2025, 2021, 2017, 2 in 2016, and 2 in 2015. The fire also comes about a month after Weber filed for Chapter 11, which listed its 20 largest unsecured creditors, including about $4.4 million in debt. A few weeks before this bankruptcy announcement, Weber also posted a WARN notice that revealed plans to lay off 145 workers at its Lebanon distribution center. The company has planned to close this distribution center and consolidate operations at this plant that recently caught fire. Jeff, is it true that instead of being used to rebuild this facility, the insurance claims could actually go to those creditors?
It depends. Yeah, I mean, all these bankruptcy proceedings, whenever there's additional funds coming in, creditors can take this to court and challenge how things are being used, even insurance claims.
Wow.
So, yeah, Weber's in a really tough spot here, especially just this whole dynamic of their biggest issue is essentially their core product. I mean, that's they're a lumber yard. And obviously when that catches on fire, it goes quickly, and that's all your inventory as well. Yeah. So not only is their facility damaged, their product is gone. Yeah, literally. So just a horrible sort of convergence of factors here. You have to wonder, the first thing that stood out to me in looking through this, because unfortunately we have way too many factory fire stories. Yeah. But the 7th one in 10 years.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, we talk about culture all the time. You would think at a facility like this, there's nothing more paramount than fire prevention.
Yeah, and suppression.
So it's kind of mind-blowing that continues to go on. And for even some of these legacy fires, there was no understanding of what caused them. They've talked about theoretically, potentially some equipment failures. I don't know if that means something just like cooling guards not in place on a lot of the saws or other equipment that's in use. If something failed from a fire alert or a warning perspective, I don't know. But a reoccurring issue like this pinpoints that there's a bigger problem. And that may also correlate with the fact that this company is in bad shape. Obviously, you don't file for Chapter 11 if things are going as smoothly as you'd want.
Yeah.
It feels like in some cases, if you look at the history of this company, maybe they tried to expand a little too quickly, didn't quite keep up with a lot of the trends that are going on right now within this particular marketplace in terms of consolidation and bigger enterprises and bigger scale. Trying to keep up. Again, we're sort of throwing out some theories here. But if you continue to see these types of problems, you have to kind of think something was not looked at. They were sidestepping some things in the efforts to stay profitable that probably impacted their ability to either identify or prevent some of these fires.
I mean, when we talk about risk prevention and we talk about some of the tools that have come out, especially with batteries that go into EVs and some of the fire suppression systems that we've seen come out to help mitigate like thermal runaway. I feel like some of these safety systems have to exist. I understand that they're incredibly pricey. And when you have a legacy company that's 84 years old, maybe they're a little less likely to adopt that technology. I don't know. I feel like it's out there, right? And I mean, when you have local fire officials saying like, hey, there isn't a bigger hot box in the state, I feel like there are steps that maybe you should have taken to prevent this going forward. And, when you look at a company that has had 7 fires in the last 10 years, I mean, you would hope that there were a few more measures in place to kind of prevent it from happening again. I mean, what was the last one? Like May of this year? Like, I mean, it is a very, it's a reality. It's not like they could look at like, yeah, we had one back in 2016. But I mean, like this just happened.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on and how can we prevent it going forward?
Yeah, for it to be ongoing like that is obviously very concerning. Looking at this story, I thought it was interesting. So obviously the bankruptcy and the layoffs is really catchy headline, but how does it relate to the fire? And it is kind of hard to know if it does or not. But I know that I read another news story done by WGAL, which is like a local news affiliate, who interviewed a neighbor who's lived across from this sawmill since the early 2000s, named Lee. And she said this was the worst I've ever seen in my life. There's been about 5 to 7, maybe 8 fires since I moved here. None of them bad like this. It's just god awful, she said. But then Lee, this person they interviewed, commented on the recent developments that had taken place at Weber and said, well, it's no big secret that they just filed for bankruptcy. It's no big secret that they let a lot of workers go. And I think what's implied there is that potentially that is related. And I don't think that's being said with any evidence of that.
Yeah.
But probably those are the rumors that are at least going around. We'll see what happens here after the fire is completely extinguished, hotspots, and everything. And then they start to fully investigate what took place. But I think there's a lot of things that could suggest that this was an accident. This history of fires, obviously something's not going right there, these combustible materials. But I think maybe the added factor here to be considered, and I think you were kind of alluding to this as well, but a demoralized workforce, maybe a skeleton crew, folks that are maybe kind of checked out at this point. I mean, the Warren filing was just within the last month, I think.
Yeah.
People know that their jobs are going away. I thought it was striking that there was one person there inside. Yeah. Why, if this is a hot box of wood plank in a DC and they've had fires in the past, why is there not more oversight, even if it's off hours? That was surprising to me. So you do kind of wonder if amidst these cuts, things were being overlooked. And to me, that's probably the more likely scenario, that again, this was another accident in a place that maybe has this ongoing culture of safety risk already. Probably not somebody deliberately doing that. I don't think that has been suggested by anyone. But again, people are going to talk.
Oh, people are going to talk. There were a lot of commenters online that were saying, suspicious.
But not suspicious if they've had 10 fires, right?
True, but I also that's what I think. Like, I think if you have a better track record, if you have a cleaner record, half as many fires, people don't look at this and add it all up and say, like, I don't know, it looks like something fishy happened. But also, I guess if your track record is bad enough, it's just like, well, it's just another fire in a long list of fires. I don't know. But I think it goes to show that if you are a better corporate citizen and you run a cleaner operation, that you are just less likely to have these types of crazy accidents. I think sometimes it's just that simple.
Yeah.
The other thing too, we've covered this story here obviously pretty thoroughly. Still worth checking out to see the video. Yeah. When you see the size of this facility, how big it is, and how long this fire burned and how brightly. They have that like time-lapse video that we put on the site.
Yeah.
Kind of amazing when you see this. I think it started at either 10 or 12 o'clock at night and it goes till 6.
Yeah.
Nothing changes.
Yeah.
Firefighters were there dousing this with
a million gallons
of water, and it did not change.
No, it basically went from trying to put it out to just like trying to keep it there, correct. Controlling it. And we talk about so many of those stories where it's like not in my backyard. They talk to this Lee person across the street and she's like, 7 or 8 fires, been crazy. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. That is a wild situation. Kind of interesting we'll have to follow this story to see if they do give a cause as to what set things off at Weber. All right, our next most popular story. ConocoPhillips to lay off thousands of workers. Oil giant ConocoPhillips laid out a plan to lay off up to a quarter of its workforce. Thousands of jobs. 20 to 25% of the company's employees and contractors will be impacted. Between 2,600 and 3,250 workers out of a job by the end of this year. In an email, a spokesperson told the AP, quote, "We are always looking at how we can be more efficient with the resources we have." Kind of cold. The company needs to cut costs, despite Q2 earnings of $1.97 billion that actually beat Wall Street expectations. Still, that $1.97 billion is down from the nearly $2.33 billion the company reported in Q2 of last year. In a recent earnings report, ConocoPhillips said it had identified more than $1 billion in cost reductions and margin optimization. Anna, do you think the cutting for Conoco stops here?
I don't know. I think it's interesting as Americans how we often look at low gas prices as how they impact us as consumers and not the downstream effects of that for the oil and gas industry and employment and things like that. If you look at the broader context here, the layoffs at ConocoPhillips are part of a larger effort by oil and gas right now to cut costs, and the implications could be major. In fact, Reuters said that such moves by large players in the oil and gas industry could mark the end of the rapid output growth that made the U.S. the world's top producer.
Whoa.
Yeah, Reuters says that. So Reuters is saying that OPEC nations are increasing production in an attempt to win back some of the market share that they lost from American producers, which is driving prices down. And U.S. producers are just above break-even levels, which is causing many of them, not just the producers, but also oil services companies like Halliburton, for example, to cut costs. Chevron did the same as Conoco, having announced in February that they were cutting about 8,000 jobs. Industry-wide, Reuters says U.S. industry companies have cut a combined $2 billion in expenses. So that's got to come from somewhere. It's a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
There was a quote in this article that I read from Kirk Edwards, who's the president of Latigo Petroleum of Texas. And he said, "We've gone from drill, baby, drill to wait, baby, wait here in the Permian. It's having a very devastating effect on domestic employment, and eventually it will affect our production," said Edwards. I think the takeaway there is that unless something dramatic changes, we are going to be looking at an increase in the reliance on foreign oil, which is something that had been in decline for the last, decade or so, as there's been more emphasis on American production. It's a big export for the U.S., so it is concerning to see that take place. And so your question, do I think that Conoco is done? I don't know that anybody is done.
Yeah.
This is something that we should be watching closely, because once this industry gets away from us domestically, then we lose a lot of leverage on that price in the end.
Do you think, given the importance that the current administration put on the drill baby drill mentality, do you think that they might put forward more efforts to try and prop up the industry a little bit more? Or do you think that, this is just a sign of things to come?
More than we already do?
I don't know. I was just like, it was such an important part of the campaign that like it can't, drill baby drill can't turn to wait baby wait, right?
That's where we are now. I don't know.
Jeff, when you look at the story and just the tens of thousands of people that are losing their jobs, I mean, that has an incredible impact, not just on the company, but these communities that these people live in. And, do you see more of this to come from ConocoPhillips? Like I kind of asked Anna, and at least I guess, we do see a job market where some of these positions might be able to move into other companies.
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, these are pretty deep cuts for ConocoPhillips here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it from other oil companies.
Yeah.
They have to make these types of cuts because this goes, Anna explained the OPEC situation very well. There's additional factors here, I think, tied to this just global economic volatility that we're all experiencing right now. ConocoPhillips, I was very surprised when I looked at this. 80% of their operations is in Alaska and the continental 48 states.
Yeah.
So they are obviously very dependent on efficient, profitable production here in the U.S. In addition to OPEC driving down prices, you've also got a lot of factors that are inhibiting margins, are really hurting them from an operational perspective when you look at all of these steel and aluminum and other materials that they need to mine and process oil.
Yeah.
All of those things are subject to tariffs right now, which are eating away at margins, which then impact your ability to produce oil and employ people. So all this stuff comes full circle. Even though this is a global company, I think this is going to be felt most heavily here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Very, very, very harshly. And I think we'll see this from other oil companies as well until we figure it out. In terms of the administration getting more involved, they've done what they're going to do. They've shown
they've already been involved.
I mean, they in their efforts to drill baby drill, they've kind of drilled through their own foot because they can't. It's not that these companies don't want to. It's that it is cost prohibitive in some ways for them to continue at the pace that they always have been. They want to drill in the Permian, but if they're not making money doing it, how do they continue? Is
part of the issue that, a lot of times we talk about the argument with the slim margins with like food manufacturing. And I think it's widely known that like meat processing and meat packaging is that type of industry. Do you think part of the issue is that people hear oil and gas and they just think printing money?
Well, 100%. I mean, we just talked about a company that has $2 billion in revenues and they're cutting 25% of their workforce.
Yeah.
That doesn't translate. And I think part of the disconnect is there's profitability and then there's gas prices. So people think, well, gas prices are down, production is up, that's good for everybody.
Yeah.
No, that isn't the case. Oil companies are doing best when gas prices are higher.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody hates. And that's something that the Trump administration, well, really any administration, any political individual always wants to talk about lower gas prices.
Oh, yeah.
So it's sort of a weird dichotomy between those two factors that in one hand can help a political administration. On the other hand, nobody wants to talk about people losing their jobs.
Yeah. Gas, milk, and eggs. That's all we want to talk about. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Tyson Exec exits for code of conduct breach. Last Tuesday, Tyson Foods announced that Brady Stewart, Group President of Prepared Foods, Beef and Pork, and the company's Chief Supply Chain Officer, was leaving the company immediately. Stewart took, quote, certain actions that violated Tyson's code of conduct. Tyson named Devin Cole as Chief Operating Officer to oversee the company's business segments, including poultry, beef, pork, prepared foods, and international. Cole has more than 30 years of experience in the industry and recently served as Group President of Poultry and International at Tyson, where he was responsible for the company's third consecutive quarter of volume growth in poultry and improved profitability to its international businesses by driving efficiencies and cost controls, all according to the company. In a statement, Company CEO said, "We remain committed to executing our long-term strategy and operating the company guided by our culture and core values." The leadership shakeup comes about a year after Tyson's chief financial officer, John Randall Tyson, was suspended and demoted after running into some legal trouble. He managed to land on his feet, however, and this May, he is the heir of John W. Tyson, was appointed to the meatpacking company's board, along with his sister Olivia. Anna, is Tyson reinforcing an argument that some actions by certain individuals don't have the same consequences that others might have for making the same mistakes?
Yes, I think they are. That was the first thing that I took away from this when I looked at this story, because obviously we covered the John Randall Tyson issues when they took place a few years back. On the one hand, Tyson's a large company, so you have to be cautious about taking too much away from this. But this executive code of conduct issue coming within a reasonable time frame since this issue with John Randall Tyson made me want to talk about that, because I think it's important. When you look at that case, he was about 32, 33 when he was demoted from CFO.
Yeah.
That was not his first brush with the law. In 2022, authorities found him asleep in someone else's home about a month after he was appointed CFO. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge at the time. He paid a $440 fine. And then at the time, he called the incident in a statement to shareholders inconsistent with the company's values, adding he was committed to making sure this never happens again. So I'm not really sure what message it sends when not long after that, he got arrested for a DWI. He was demoted, but he still stayed on as an executive vice president despite losing that title. Then, as you mentioned, quietly appointed to the board this year. So all in, his annual comp is something north of $500,000. Is Tyson taking this code of conduct seriously? Because it doesn't seem like it. And maybe it's only if your last name isn't Tyson that they are. I don't know. It's still not clear what caused the termination of Brady Stewart, and maybe we'll never know. But I don't think that allowing consumers and the market and the shareholders to make this very easy comparison between the two situations, I don't think that's a great look for Tyson. I know that at this point they can't do that much about it, but it just seemed like a big misstep to give John Randall such a long rope, in my opinion. I think it gives others the impression that like a certain amount of BS will be tolerated. If it's among the Tyson family. And it just feels like really amateurish. Like it's like I don't know. I'm not impressed. And like, it also makes you wonder, like, what else is influencing these decisions of the company? When this looks clearly like nepotism to me, that he is still working there after this, multiple, that's a black eye. These both very publicized cases, really embarrassing for the company. But if you're Brady Stewart, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was way, way worse. But still, I'd like to know.
When that's kind of your track record, I think it could just be as simple as when you work at a family-owned and operated company, like that is just the harsh reality. Like if your last name is this, there's a different set of rules than there are for everybody else. And unfortunately, that's a reality for a lot of companies out there. It's not a good look. It's not a great way to run your business. But I've worked at those companies before where somebody else is treated differently, and you're just like, well, you know what their last name is, or you know that this manager is married to this person, and it's just different. And unfortunately, that is a harsh reality for a lot of people that work in the industry. Yeah,
but that is how business culture will rot from the inside. I mean, people notice that, and it rubs people the wrong way to see like preferential treatment for somebody who's like constantly screwing up. I don't know.
No, I completely agree. And Jeff, with that rot, is it part of it the attitude of just like, hey, people are always going to need a job, so we'll always have people to fill these roles, and so it really doesn't matter if we're showing that, leading by example with a double standard?
I think it's very dangerous to associate Brady Stewart with John Randall Tyson here when we don't know what this guy did.
We don't know.
He could have been doing horrendous things. There could have, who knows? I don't even want to speculate all the different things that could have come out.
But if it was a financial issue, they would have had to disclose that, I believe, because they're public. So that's why I was like, it seemed like more of a.
But if this is still under investigation, they can wait until they know all the facts.
True.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to go down that road. I think one of the reasons that Tyson may have gotten a little bit more of a pass, yes, it's his last name, but he's on the board. That's not really an operational role. It's more of a figurehead.
Yeah, but he's an executive vice president still. He still works
There's
there.
also market value in his last name. And I think when you see that on the letterhead, that people like to see that. If you're somebody who's going to just let me get there. Just relax. The voice went high. David really wants to get in there and say something because he was up near. It definitely elevated.
It just went up an octave.
Just give me a second. What I'm saying is there can still be benefit to that name. I understand the favoritism that's being shown here, all of that kind of stuff. But if there's benefit to the company by having somebody with the last name of Tyson on the letterhead, there's more benefit to everyone else within the company, potentially. Now, I understand that these were very high-profile situations that made the company and him look bad, but would this have also been that high profile if that wasn't his last name? If this was just another CFO, somebody else on there, would they really have made any kind of public recognition even of it?
Yeah.
They had to because of his last name. So there is a weird dynamic there in terms of potentially it's kind of like being the quarterback of a team, right? You get too much credit when things go well and you get too much blame when they don't. I'm not trying to bypass any accountability he has for his own poor actions and bad judgment here. But I think until we know all the details, it's hard to equate these two individuals and put them on the same level.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit careful there. But what I would agree with what Anna was saying is there needs to be consistency. If you're pointing to a code of conduct, that's not saying there was legal issues. They're not saying this is something that was, I don't know, more specific to the individual behavior or job performance or something. You're looking at something that is a little bit more concrete, that carries sort of an SOP to it. And if you're going to do that, then there does need to be a greater sense of consistency there, because otherwise that whole lead by example and everything else you're trying to establish from a corporate culture perspective goes out the window.
Is it more concrete? Because I feel like when it's looped into our code of conduct, I feel like it can be a little more loose as to what violates the code of conduct.
Yeah, there's probably nothing in there about sleeping in someone else's house.
Yeah, that's a clear violation of our code of conduct. What's our code of conduct? Well,
Well, and I guess I'm borrowing from the military primarily. When you look at a code of conduct, it's very clear. It's not short. It's not lengthy. It's very clear, very concise, and everybody knows that if there is a obvious violation here, you're going to be in trouble. That's how I view it. Now, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. You can whitewash anything and make it as vague as you want it to be. I feel like Tyson is maybe trying to do the right thing here, but because they had this previous incident with somebody with a high-profile name, it's difficult. But in the end of the day, I agree. There does need to be greater consistency.
Well, and there is just an inherent double standard with a family-owned and run business. There's going to be favor.
There's hard to equate that. I would agree with when you're looking at a company of 250 to 300 employees, maybe that you were working at, that is different than a global entity like Tyson.
Yeah.
That last name is going to be, and I think it has to be. I think it has to be because there's value, there's shareholder value, there's so many other different elements that are involved with having that last name and having that person involved with the company.
Yeah.
That can have greater benefit regardless of how good or bad that person is at their job.
So you're saying that it's better to have a fourth generation on the board regardless of performance just because of legacy?
Potentially. I think there are some partners, some people that they're going to be working with, suppliers, retailers, whomever you want to say, who will say, I feel better working with Tyson because, they've got this legacy. And look, there's still a Tyson involved with the day-to-day operations of this company.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I do see people out there that would, I've always done business with the family. I could see that. But, I mean, there has to be limits.
100% agree. And I think once we see what actually happened here, we'll have a clearer picture.
Think we ever will.
Hope so.
Yeah. All right. Our next most popular story. ICE raids at the Hyundai EV factory in Georgia. Last week, U.S. immigration authorities detained about 475 people, including more than 300 South Koreans, during a raid at a sprawling Georgia site where Hyundai manufactures EVs. A lawyer for several workers detained at the factory says many of the South Koreans rounded up in the immigration raid are engineers and equipment installers brought in for the highly specialized work of getting an electric battery plant online. Many were doing work as authorized under the B-1 Business Visitor Visa program. The lawyer says these people plan to be in the U.S. for just a couple of weeks and, quote, never longer than 75 days. South Korean officials scrambled to bring these detainees home, and I think as of this recording, they're either on their way or on the tarmac. Many people have expressed confusion, shock, even a sense of betrayal. President Donald Trump said the workers, quote, were here illegally, and that instead the U.S. needs to arrange with other countries to have their experts train U.S. citizens to do specialized work such as battery and computer manufacturing. According to this immigration lawyer, no U.S. company makes the machines used in the Georgia battery plant. This work could take 3 to 5 years to train a U.S. counterpart. Quote, this is not something new, the lawyer told the AP. We've been doing this forever. When we ship things abroad, we send our folks there to take care of it. Anna, the raid in Georgia sends some really mixed messages to other countries, especially as we are trying to reshore work to U.S. soil.
Agreed. I mean, this is sure to have some diplomatic implications. It already has. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung said that if Washington does not ease visa requirements for workers from his country, its businesses would hesitate to build new factories there. He was very clear about that. And that was my first thought, of course, was here you have this Korean company with billions invested in U.S. operations who is spending billions more in these greenfield sites, major brand like Hyundai. Imagine if that situation were reversed. You have an American firm building a factory overseas and send people out to get it set up to a country that's supposedly an ally of yours. And then you see those people apprehended, detained, deported. Something tells me that would not go over well if that happened.
I believe they would have called that an international incident.
I believe they would.
Yeah.
And, as Korea contends, these were not long-term workers. They were rather technically trained individuals, as you said. The president said that, as these skilled workers were building this technology to get this plant up and running, that you cannot find these workers in the United States, nor does it give visas for these people to stay and work. There was just no way to do it besides the way they were doing it. And it just felt like an extremely embarrassing situation to look at from my perspective. I think, as you said, it's going to give foreign companies pause when they look at what investments to make in the United States. And last I checked, that's not what we're going for exactly, right? I mean, we're looking for investment. We're looking for growth opportunities. And I think, the last thing I read today before we came in was that many of the workers were offered the option to stay, and many of them decided to leave after the experience, which I'm sure was very traumatizing for all of these people.
They were shackled. These are people many of these people were workers that were here legally on a legal visa, and they were shackled and detained for doing their job. It is very understandable why they don't want to stick around.
Very. And so I just, I just don't understand what we're doing here. I feel like this goal of deportations has so clouded the overall vision as to what we're trying to do as a country. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense when we continue to deport people that are supporting industries that actually need the support of these workers. Yeah. This situation notwithstanding, this was very strange. But it's happening in a widespread way, I think, across the country, that these businesses are being kneecapped by the immigration policy that's taking place. I'm not trying to get too political, but it is frustrating to watch.
Well, we talked about it last week in terms of the 1.2 million, I believe, individuals that are no longer in the workforce right now. And, we keep hearing these stories about, make sure you have your papers on you. And that is, I mean, that's just a scary day to day to operate in. But, you know, you want to make sure that you have your identification, because there are also these numbers, these goals that we want to hit in terms of these raids. And while we flout like how massive the scales of these raids are, we never really come back around as to what the actual fallout was, right? So it comes out, huge raid, 475 people detained, and then we're just really slow to be like, at least 300 of them were fine. You know, like 300 people were here legally, had their papers, and everything was in order. And it's also really frustrating sometimes when we see the discourse online and people are just like, if you're here illegally, get out. And the second paragraph says like they were here legally, you know, like read the third sentence, man. Jeff, well, since we already had this conversation, we'll just go on to the next one. But no, I mean, I think this is an incredibly frustrating thing, because when we do talk about these partnerships, bringing these specialty advanced manufacturing jobs and factories to the United States, it's going to require specialists with skill sets that we don't have here. And there's got to be some sort of wiggle room in terms of training or bringing these workers over to make it happen.
We've talked about this as well, but there's this weird dynamic of isolationism when it comes to a lot of this market expansion, which does not make sense to me. We live in a global economy. You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. We need to embrace that. And in this situation, there's middle ground. Yeah. And we're so afraid of the middle lately. Yeah. That's what I really struggle with. That's where I get frustrated. First of all, to start off with, there is justification for greater scrutiny on this facility. Okay. There was a lot of concern over individuals who were there doing jobs that should have gone to union positions. You can, however you want to feel about that, that's fair, but that is the way that this works. Yeah. There are certain jobs that these individuals were not supposed to be doing, and there was concern about that. So if there's folks from OSHA, the DOL, whomever would handle that, they should be looking at those things. There were also significant safety concerns at this construction site. 3 people have died at this site.
Woo.
Okay? That's going to bring scrutiny.
Yeah.
That's fair. And to go in and whether it's ICE or whomever to look at it and make sure things are operating appropriately here and the right people are in place to perform this in a safe and efficient manner, that makes sense. Check their papers. Yeah. Look at them. The folks that shouldn't be here, you have to take the correct legal action. Part of the issue is these raids are not law enforcement. They're military. If you saw any of the footage, this was not people going in there checking papers. Let's make sure this place is running up to speed. Let's do the OSHA documentation. It was military. Military vehicles, people wearing bulletproof vests, everything else you want to talk about. That doesn't encourage people to work together towards a solution. That encourages fear. That encourages people to hide things that they probably wouldn't have to hide, and less transparency. So again, find the middle ground here and work through a lot of these things, because you can look at all of those issues around this facility and the construction of it and were the right people in place and all that. Long term, you're looking at 8,500 U.S. jobs. Yeah. Do you want them?
Yeah.
In a growing market, EV batteries, we want this facility. We want these jobs. This is what we have to do to make it work. It doesn't have to be ultra rigid in terms of making this work. A lot of these folks, their visas are not a lot. Some of these folks did have visas that expired. Work with them. Yeah. Get the paperwork right. We're not talking about individuals we have to worry about from a national security perspective. They weren't stealing jobs from U.S. workers. These are individuals with, as you guys alluded to, with special skill sets to get this factory up and running. Yeah. As a result, that's not going to happen. It's going to be delayed another 2 months.
Oh, at least.
Some of the additional fallout that you talked about, Anna, in terms of internationally, with South Korea speculating and wondering, do we still want to build plants in the U.S.? Guess who else is having the same conversation? Japan.
Yeah.
And guess who is loving that? Canada and Mexico, because they will welcome them with open arms, and they'll make sure all the tax breaks and everything else that they need will help supplement some of the tariffs they'd have to bring their products into this country. They can still do it economically and competitively with some of these things that are going on. Read the room, guys. Yeah. This is what I have to tell the administration and some of the folks in power. We're all for trying to solve the immigration issue, but there's a right way to do it. This wasn't it.
No, I mean, you're right in terms of that mentality. It's right now it's win or lose, right? Where it's like you're either winning or losing. And that is just, I feel like we're in a situation right now with this particular plant where it could be a real loss in terms of what they offered to bring in terms of jobs, like 8,500, like you said, the multi-billion-dollar investment, and all over, I mean, basically some bad paperwork for some people or people that just didn't have it on them. And really, I mean, this came out the same day or the same week as, a Korean biotech company, JS Link, announced that they were going to build a $223 million magnet factory in Georgia, and it's just like, that's when they issue the press release through the Georgia's governor. And I would, it's just like, whoa, hold on to that thing for a second, just because it is I feel like these types of situations, in a good way, going to make sure that everything is tight, paperwork wise, to make sure before anything starts. But it will give people real pause and look at other partners, North American partners, to your point.
Well, the other thing, Anna mentioned about not wanting to politicize this. That is hard to do because this raid came out the same day as that jobs report came out, talking about unemployment that hasn't been this bad since 2021, all the jobs that were not created, the slow job growth, all that was going on, and all of that was something that President Trump needed to address. It's hard. You don't want to, but it's hard not to connect the dots then to something like this happening.
Yeah.
Well, and exactly. And if the effort so far is build cars in the U.S. or we're going to tariff you into oblivion, but if you build them in the U.S., we're going to export all your workers, and none of it lines up. I mean, again, we have to look at what is the actual objective of the economic policy, and does this immigration policy support that? And I just think right now it does not, generally.
And this ties into some of the other stories we were having here. ConocoPhillips is doing some of the things that they're doing from a cutback perspective because of all the economic volatility. Yeah. They don't know.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that in a lot of these stories that we bring up. A lot of this is coming from the fact that companies need to prepare themselves because they don't know how this is all going to play out.
Yeah.
And we're getting more of these types of stories.
Well, and it's created this adversarial economic environment, which leads us to our most popular story this week. Canadian Premier pledges to hurt Crown Royal maker over factory closure. Diageo is the maker behind Crown Royal whiskey, among many others. But it has drawn the ire of our neighbors to the north after a recent business decision impacting a plant in Amherstburg, a town on the Detroit River border with the United States. Ontario Premier Doug Ford recently responded to reports that the spirits company is going to be closing an Amherstburg Crown Royal bottling plant that's going to eliminate 180 jobs in the process. So Ford responded with a measured, thought-provoking response that provided a real opportunity to find common ground. Oh, wait, that wasn't this story, because Ford said, "You hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you," and said Diageo's leaders were, quote, "dumb as a bag of hammers," like a real gentleman. He then dumped out a full bottle of Crown Royal whiskey onto the ground in protest and then encouraged others to do the same thing. I guess, hey, they got to buy at least one bottle to do that.
True. Yeah.
And to, quote, "stop supporting companies that make whiskey here in Ontario."
Start supporting companies.
Oh, did I say stop?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I mean, don't do that.
He doesn't want you to do that.
You want to start.
He's going to hurt you.
Yeah, he's going to hurt me because I'm dumb as a hammer.
Dumb as a bag of hammers.
Well, we've all said that. No, anyway,
Jesus.
side story. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's better than the bag of other things. Diageo says the decision was made long before Canada and U.S. entered this trade tiff that we're currently in. The company says the move was part of an effort to streamline its North American supply chain and move closer to U.S. customers. While Ford calls for a boycott, the Toronto Sun says that Crown Royal is only made in Canada, where the brand actually employs 500 workers. Not to mention the company buys millions of dollars worth of the country's corn, rye, and barley in order to make it. Ford says that unless Diageo reverses this decision, he might delist the company's other products, taking them off of Canadian shelves. Anna, is it possible that Diageo was just making a tough cost-cutting decision and not fanning the flames of this U.S.-Canada trade war?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that they were trying to get into it.
What a reasonable assumption.
With Doug Ford. Generally speaking, I don't love political rhetoric targeting specific businesses, unless those businesses are doing something egregious. But closing a facility that doesn't fit with your strategic roadmap, or it's too costly to operate, or it's redundant, or it's outdated, or you don't have enough workers, or whatever. Companies have lots of reasons that they do this. We cover it constantly, right? It's just honestly an unfortunate part of running a business.
Yeah, cost of doing business.
It is, though. Like nobody likes it, but it is. And so calling company leaders dumb for this decision, I think, is not a good way to make positive progress.
Yeah.
And, maybe the U.S. is setting the tone with some of this nastiness.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's been coming out of our political culture for a while, I would say, suggesting to others that it's okay to do this. I don't know. I don't love it. But, not to mention Ford may be doing it poorly, as the Toronto Sun points out, because Crown Royal still has a notable impact on the Canadian economy. So threatening to pull its products from the national sales is a tactic that I think is actually pretty loaded with risk. This is just not a good idea. Outside of that, you look at Diageo specifically, so they have a lot riding on Crown Royal. Scotch whiskey as a category is down, but Crown Royal sales are actually up. And for a unique reason, a new variety called Crown Royal Blackberry is selling very well, and they're calling it a gateway. And not like the best terminology, but they're calling it a gateway for new whiskey drinkers. Apparently, and this is according to Forbes, they say 1 in 4 Blackberry Crown Royal buyers is new to the whiskey category altogether. So Diageo is looking to use this brand actually as a growth engine by, focusing on some of these new varieties that are getting more people into their business. And so I think it shouldn't be unexpected that the company is going to make some changes at this point in order to optimize these growth opportunities, right? And so we should be supporting that, not dumping their product onto the ground in a public forum. It was poor leadership. I just was not impressed by the entire spectacle. I mean, it was just, intention grabbing and just not an effective way to actually make progress with this company, I thought. Yeah,
a flimsy PR stunt. And Jeff, part of me thinks, is this just fighting rhetorical fire with rhetorical fire? And you also, my initial thought is, hey, is he just taking a page out of the U.S. Politicking playbook? But it could just be a page from the Ford family playbook, because his brother Rob Ford actually kind of set the ground, or set the base that the Trump campaign kind of built off of. And so, well, okay, he set a climate in Toronto that some say could have inspired similar tactics from other politicians.
When I saw Doug's picture, I had to see if he was Rob's brother. And definitely you can see the similarities there. Yeah. So you can see some of the same temperament coming through, for sure. At the end of the day, this is, just to offer some context, this is like the governor of Wisconsin saying, don't buy GM vehicles because they moved out of Janesville. Yeah. What? Yeah. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So the other part of this too is, Diageo still has their big plant in Manitoba, and I believe another one in Quebec. So they're not ditching Canada. They just left this particular facility like we've been talking about here. The bigger issue for me is, if I'm in Quebec, I'm thinking, how is this guy going to attract other people to potentially replace these 180 jobs? Correct. Yeah. Who wants to enter this climate and talk to this guy about building a factory or revamping a factory or growing my business, when if I do one thing that alienates him, I'm going to have to deal with this? It's got to be they got to be making a big enough thing that he can't dump it out or push it into a river. And I don't know how his constituents feel about this behavior. I don't have the pulse on the Quebec public. Yeah. But it just has to resonate poorly with a lot of people and a lot of individuals who are going to make decisions to spend money or not spend money in this province. It's just a poor just bad behavior, just poor decisions.
Yeah,
all
it's
the way
just
around.
it's immature, and it is, unfortunately, it's this kind of rhetoric that creates engagement, that creates a PR stunt. But when it comes to your constituents, they look at and they might be embarrassed.
Well, there's a little bit of a parallel to the story we just talked about down in Georgia. It's short-term, long-term. Yeah, maybe you get that short-term rush of people going, hell yeah. But then long-term, you're going, wait, that was a really bad call.
Yeah. It's so much different than when we compare, like when we talk about in the story about how other brands were pulled from the shelves due to the tariff fight. It's way different than that in terms of I see how it's easy to draw a comparison to that, but it's a completely different situation. All right. Well, before we jump into, in case you missed it, the stories that weren't as popular on our websites, but could still make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our new sponsor, Cyolo. This episode is brought to you by Cyolo. As manufacturers have become more agile and efficient through digitalization, greater IT/OT connectivity, and reliance on third-party vendors, they've inadvertently created more opportunities for hackers to wreak havoc. To minimize the chance of bad actors gaining access to critical OT assets, the right secure remote access, or SRA, strategy and solution can enable the many benefits of Industry 4.0 without the added risk of multi-million-dollar cyber attacks. This new guide compiles the 8 most important considerations in choosing the most effective SRA solution for your OT environment. You can download this guide with a link in the live chat as well as the link in the body copy below. In case you missed it, stories that weren't so popular, but hey, they could still mean something, in the industry going forward, particularly big things. Anna, what is your in case you missed it this week?
I picked a story about U.S. Steel ending production at an Illinois plant for 2 reasons. One, because we covered U.S. Steel significantly on the podcast. But 2, because I think the most notable thing about this story is not alluded to at all in the headline. And I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware what the golden share is bringing to the table here. This is, of course, the vote of influence that the U.S. government kind of worked into the deal as a condition of approving the merger between U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel. So basically what's happening is U.S. Steel has said it will stop processing steel slabs at the Granite City Works plant in Illinois. This is 3 months after this deal has closed. U.S. Steel said that it will end production at this plant likely in November, but that it won't lay off any of the 800 workers that work there.
What?
And it will not reduce their pay. Workers will maintain the plant so that it is operational in case anything changes.
Okay.
They will keep their jobs until at least 2027 as a result of a national security agreement between Trump and Nippon Steel that allowed its buyout. The agreement included various job protections and production guarantees. Trump promised there would be no layoffs whatsoever, and this is the result. A company paying 800 workers for the next 2 years to maintain equipment in case. Doesn't feel like a move that you make when you're trying to stay competitive, but that's where we're at. So just want to make that clear that is what is in this article, not in the headline.
What are they going to do?
Maintain the equipment.
Oh, okay.
Real hard.
Well,
Just like
at Foxconn, after they were done like maintaining the facilities, they were doing like go-kart racing.
Well, I know. I don't. 800 workers. I know that it's
2 years?
probably a massive facility, but still.
Wow.
When are they shutting down? Like right away?
November, they're going to stop production. That's likely what they said.
Gonna have to tidy things up,
Just kind of hang out and just hang tight, guys.
A lot of time to clean, I guess.
Sweep the floors.
Jeff, I'm kind of glad that Anna picked the story because that was definitely lost on me as well. I didn't have a chance to read the article. What are your thoughts on just hanging on to 800 workers? What are your thoughts on the likelihood of 800 workers still being kept on through 2027, beyond this news cycle?
You mean will 800 people stay there?
Mm-hmm. No,
will U.S. Steel find a way to get out of it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think Nippon basically agreed to a lot of these things so they can move forward.
Okay.
I think what's more likely is not all 800 of those folks are going to sit there till the last day.
Yeah.
They can use this time to find a new job. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that's what you'd want to do. I mean, there's no rush. You can take your time, obviously. Granite City, if you've been through that area, very rich historically, but also a bit economically depressed. So that could be very difficult for that area as well. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, quite honestly, you have to tip your hat a little bit to the Trump negotiation skills. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like,
So,
hey,
good for those guys.
If you want to shut it down, you got to pay him for 2 years. That's actually solid.
Pretty impressive, and hopefully, again, helps all those workers to move on
Does it
more
help?
deliberately.
Does it help the company though?
Nippon, no, not at all.
Yeah, but I mean, so
Right.
what is the difference between keeping them on for 2 years and then just like essentially giving them 2 years of severance?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, wouldn't that kind of be
The only thing
better?
I can think of is if they own all of the assets, keeping them maintained may help from a liquidation perspective. I don't
liquidation,
know.
or maybe there is like a realistic chance that production could restart, right? I mean,
Yeah, there could be. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it could restart, and that's what they're saying, or that's at least their messaging is that they're just wanting to be ready. I think the narrative is around like, oh, we have all this tariff stuff happening, and it's going to revitalize the industry, so we have to be ready to take on more capacity at that time. I don't think that is necessarily the reality. There's been a talk about how right now there's a lot of overproduction taking place in response to some of the tariffs domestically. So I don't know that there's going to be a need for this in the immediate near term. I think there's going to be a lot of waiting.
so, and is part of it because this was because of the union? Like, because news came out that this was shuttering, and then, they were going to start developing information on severance packages, but then U.S. Steel was like, oh, no one's getting laid off.
Well, the agreement that was made as to allow the merger to go forward, this was like what the federal government kind of wedged in there were these job protections because Trump said that there would be no layoffs.
Man, that is, to Jeff's point, that is a sweet deal, and these protections last until 2035 for other U.S. steel facilities except for this one. So all other U.S. steel facilities have these similar protections for 10 years?
Well, part of the things that Nippon was talking about was making a lot of investments in those current facilities, though. They weren't looking at that point when they were acquiring U.S. Steel. They weren't saying, hey, we want to shut down and fire people.
Yeah.
So maybe once they got in there, they realized this is the one casualty here. So they probably weren't real concerned about a lot of those contingencies.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, in case you missed it, thanks, Anna. Missed that one like crazy. In case you missed it this week is an update actually from the story that we covered last week. Jaguar Land Rover restart could take up to 12 months, according to a privacy expert. So, as you recall, Jaguar Land Rover is continuing to dig out from the cyber incident that shut down production last week. The company says it is working, quote, around the clock with third-party cybersecurity specialists to restart the automaker's global applications. JLR also admitted that some data was affected by the breach and has been informing the appropriate regulators as well as the people whose information was taken. Production at JLR and dozens of suppliers remains on hold, and the damage could be far-reaching. So we talked to ransomware and data privacy expert Dr. Darren Williams. He's the founder and CEO of BlackFog. He told IEN that it typically takes several months to remediate an attack like this. Williams said the cost to deploy new tools and operations could easily run into six figures very quickly. But those costs might not take the biggest toll on the ledger. He said, quote, the bigger question will be if there are any regulatory or litigation events to overcome, which can cost even more than the remediation itself, typically in the 40% to 50% of the total cost. Finally, depending on JLR's level of sophistication in dealing with cyber attacks, Williams says it could be 9 to 12 months before the automaker is fully operational. So, I chose this story just because as we continue this conversation about taking the appropriate cybersecurity measures, really the juice just isn't worth the squeeze and going cheap on this type of stuff, and making sure that you're as the least vulnerable as you possibly think you can be. Because it is wild to me. Jeff, I didn't know I wanted to get your thoughts on this update that it could be up to 12 months, before JLR is completely back online. But I also wanted to ask you about, like, are we going to enter this environment where nobody thinks they have any private information anymore after all these breaches? Just because I feel like once we entered this sort of age of the web, we just felt like our information was like a currency that we were trading, right? Like, here's my email, I get this, right? Are we going to be able to get ahead of it before it just becomes this internet where all of our information is everywhere?
So I think it's important to differentiate information from access to information.
Okay.
That's really what we're fighting here. The information, you're right, it's out there. Whoever's got it has it.
Yeah.
What we need to be better out is the access to the systems that hold all of that data.
Yeah.
And with manufacturing, it's an ongoing thing. A lot of enterprises look, hey, we've invested all this money, we bought all the tools, we're good. Just doesn't work that way. It is just like continuous improvement programs. You need to continue to invest in cybersecurity and update it. Anytime we've talked about this, I don't want to continue to harp on this, but anytime you add any type of technology or any type of remote access, that's another door.
Yeah.
Swings both ways. You got to protect it. And that's where a lot of these enterprises fall down, is because they may have things in place, but they don't continue to update it and guard against all of the new areas that they need to protect. Feels like that's what happened here with Jaguar Land Rover. We talked last week too about segmentation strategies in terms of cutting it off so that, like, if they get into one system, they can't worm their way into several others.
Yeah.
That's where that 9 to 12 months comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was just, I think they were talking about payment systems that they initially got into, whether it was supply chain, dealers, all of that. If we could have cut it off right there, that obviously helps you get back on your feet much more quickly.
Yeah.
Jaguar Land Rover talked like they basically just kind of like unplugged and
Yeah.
shut everything down.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was enough.
Yeah.
But we also don't know. It depends on how far Scattered Spider was able to get into their systems.
Yeah.
So the big thing is you can't stop. You have to keep going. You have to continually refine all of these cybersecurity strategies, because we have all this data. People are going to try to find a way in.
I mean, so with every one of these breaches, it's hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, their information that was stolen, right? And then put on the dark web or somewhere else. Like, you don't think that we'll get to this point where it's just everything about everyone's out there?
Potentially, but there's always that little piece that can be used in a different way.
Yeah.
And there's also all of these secondary markets that are out there now. So Scattered Spider sold it. Not only did they ransom, probably, we don't know for sure, they probably ransomed Jaguar Land Rover, but then they're going to take all of that information, and not just the data, but then also the credentials for logging into all of these different systems, and sell it on the dark web.
Well, that's, I mean, part of the story last week too was whether or not they ever really left. So, I didn't know if you had a chance to check out this update with the Jaguar story. And just, I think part of this issue for me too is that you think of a JLR or Jaguar Land Rover and you think premium products, premium cybersecurity measures, right? Like, I think that sometimes when you have like more of a high-end product, you think that a company's doing more to secure its consumers and its supply chain. But I don't know. It's like, it's a reminder that anyone can be targeted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think I can add much more, informed analysis than Jeff here. But I will say that I am glad that you picked the story as well, because I do think that, when we initially report on these, it's like, oh, that's terrible. You feel like you've kind of absorbed the fallout by reading that initial report. Like, oh, they had a shutdown,
Yeah.
But to see how far-reaching this downtime is for them, up to a year, that certain systems are not going to be operational, that is crippling. And if if we're talking about the size of a company, a company with deep pockets, like, maybe a company like that can withstand something that a smaller business may not survive.
Yeah.
So I think good to give this follow-up perspective on it.
Well, and part of the follow-up also was that, JLR told all their employees to stay home. And more than a dozen or dozens of their suppliers in the UK did the same. So just like, hey, go home. We'll call you when things are back up and running. Jeff, what is your in case you missed it this week?
So I picked a story call with the headline, Government to Increase Number of Inspectors Trained to Spot Rail Bridge Concerns. So I picked this for a couple reasons. Number one, we've been talking about rail safety for a lot more. There's a lot going on in Ohio, still fallout from that incident from a safety perspective. It wasn't a rail bridge, but still it reinforced how important rail is in hauling and transporting so many things that we don't think about, whether it's different chemicals or right now we're getting into harvesting season, a lot of wheat, a lot of soybeans, a lot of other things like that we're going to be counting on railroads to haul across the country. Now, Anna, if you had to guess, how many rail bridges do you think there are in the United States?
Oh, my God. God, I have no idea. 5,000?
5,000. David, how many inspectors do you think we have right now for these rail bridges?
What'd you guess? 5,000? 5.
So, unfortunately, you're closer. Anna's unbelievable, right? Now, these are all different sizes and scopes and everything, but there are 70,000 rail bridges in the U.S. Yeah. We have 7.
Yeah, I got the ratio right.
7 inspectors right now.
Yeah.
And really what their main job is to make sure the railroads have all the documentation and plans in place to inspect these rail bridges.
Yeah.
So the Trump administration, the Department of Transportation, is going to train 163 track inspectors. This is a good thing, guys.
It is.
This
is
a great thing.
Yeah.
So we're getting more people out there. And the one thing, because a lot of these bridges have just never been audited. They've never been inspected. We really don't know what the deficiencies might be. And this is where the incidents creep up. And in a lot of cases, these can be in remote areas, very rural areas, and they may even be smaller, very maybe inconsequential in initial thought in terms of if they're solid enough to handle some of these loads. But as we get more traffic across them and over time, obviously can be huge, huge safety concerns. So it's positive to hear that we're getting more folks out there. We're spending some money on getting these more of these inspectors in place to help our infrastructure.
Yeah. No, I think I'm glad when we cover these stories because I feel like one thing that we have fallen down on over the years is investing in our infrastructure. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of these incidents for people to take a hard look at where some of the red flags are from our infrastructure. And like when you start digging into some of the causes of like the Baltimore or the Key Bridge collapse. And when people are talking about like, when you have those experts that are just like, well, yeah, did you look at it? It's good to know that we're going to have more people out there looking at them. Just being like, hey, is it supposed to be like that? And I think that this could be hopefully an example for doing that more so with other transportation and things that we need to keep this country moving.
I want to think the other thing, we talked about some of the potential mergers that are going on. These are becoming huge, huge companies. There's not a lot of regional railroads anymore. We're basically looking at huge multinational organizations here, holding them more accountable to make these infrastructure improvements because they'll still be the ones that have to make the improvements. These folks are basically just going to be going out there and holding them accountable.
Yeah. So. Anna, if there's one issue that it's hard to have like a hot take against, it's making sure that the rail bridges remain structurally sound and properly maintained.
Yes, keep it up, transportation department.
Yeah.
Like I am into this.
Yeah. It is surprising that sometimes when these types of things can become contentious, and I get it when we're trying to talk about it from a cost savings perspective, but really we need to be able to kind of look down the road and, see that this is a worthwhile investment in our infrastructure.
Right. Yeah. And what kind of country do we have if it's not safe to travel?
Yeah.
Down the road or whatever, transport goods across the country. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm into it.
I would be like, I wish we had one of those podcasts where no matter what it was, you had to take the other side.
Yeah.
Just like, well, hold on a second.
Counterpoint.
We've gone how long with 7 and
Rail,
it's been fine.
Yeah.
Do
Rail
we need
safety.
bridges? Do we? Or is this really just an opportunity for Hyperloop technology that will jump these crevasses?
It also, when you have safe bridges, it also helps the people who steal stuff from trains.
That's right. Think of all those train pirates
So
out
you're
there.
pro-crime, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're pro-crime.
Fair enough.
Well, before we get out of here this week, let's jump into our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
Well, just an update from last week when I said that the first day of school went so well that we were bound to get some sort of crazy illness, like right off the bat. That came true. So glad I said it. My 7-year-old son, who had perfect attendance last year, has already missed 3 days of school. Not feeling great about that. But maybe we're just getting it out of the way.
Yeah, just get it out early.
Yep.
Just really daring it into existence.
I really did. It was my fault.
My final thought this week is just, talking about the importance of communication professionally, personally, for all kinds of reasons. I got to single dad it for the better part of this week while my wife was traveling. And on Tuesday night, it was understood that my wife would still be on the road traveling. And as I was coordinating babysitters so that way I could play softball, all of a sudden she came out of nowhere from the garage and just scared the bejesus out of me. Just like showed up, like all of a sudden there was, when you don't expect anyone to be there and then all of a sudden they're there, it's terrifying. And while I was very happy to see her, I do wish that, maybe she had communicated this surprise with me just because in the whole babysitter situation, my heart. And and it also just really proved how I am not equipped for some sort of intruder situation because basically I saw, an intruder coming into our home, and my defense mechanism was scream and curse really loud. And before,
how high pitched was your voice?
Yeah, I'm picturing it.
No, it was definitely a very high pitch, like what the, and then other things.
Yeah,
and then the boys just immediately they were like happy to see mommy / also like, oh, you can't say that, and I was like, immediate teachable moment. No one say that. We all know that's wrong. Mm-hmm. Also, good to see you, hon. Wish to text. Just anything. And it was a great surprise, but it was also like, you can save the surprises sometimes, especially when there are other moving parts.
Not everything has to be
Not everything has to be a surprise. No, but it's still a good one. Still a good one. Mm-hmm. Anyway, need to work on like some sort of like risk management, some sort of planning personally for the home for in the event that something like that happens. So that way I'm a little more equipped mentally. Because it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Just, you see those videos like where they take videos of people when they surprise them or scare them and how they react. And I'm just always like, never. I would never respond that way. 100% all in on that one.
I mean, Jeff and I know your wife pretty well, and she is not scary to us. I don't know why.
Yeah.
No. You used to call her Cobra.
What were you doing?
I was cooking dinner. So I think that was part of it too, is we were like amidst this like calm, quiet dinner, and I was standing up going into the kitchen and boom, she was there, and I was just like, ah! And
it was higher pitched than that though.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, it wasn't as high pitched because like it was almost, I was so like taken aback that like my breath was taken away. So it was kind of like
see, you can roll with this. You can say, Carrie, you took my breath away.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and then there was like that really weird silence afterwards, kind of just like, hey, what just happened?
Yeah, she's like, why are you in a karate stance?
Yeah, like, I'm glad that you are the protector of this home, and I feel so much safer for myself and my family.
Was so impressed.
Oh, yeah, just like, at least she didn't like just turn around and go back to the conference for the day she was expecting to be there. But yeah, so hey, you know what? The poor attendance at that conference was our family's reward, and we got to have her back a day early. Thank you.
There you go.
Jeff, your final thought this week.
Final thought. So my wife is doing a race, 5K fundraiser type thing at the beginning of October. So she's training for it, doing awesome. Last Sunday, she wanted to walk the route. So we went out and walked this route, which was cool for a number of reasons. Her and I just kind of got out. It was a beautiful day, all that. But it was also in an area that we go past or around all the time, but never really like looked at or went through. Turns out it's a beautiful like running path. There's ponds. There was ducks land. It was great. It was very cool. And I guess the takeaway is a lot of times when you're driving past an area or you don't have the time to check it out, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It turns out there, like I said, a bunch of great walking and running paths and just different scenery that I did not realize was literally in my own backyard.
Yeah.
So it was very cool.
No, I think that comes up so many times. Like we talk about being a tourist in your own town, or just like taking a moment to appreciate what's actually around you. You know, like I think that happens a lot. Like, I mean, we have the conservancy over by our house, and there are so many people that are like, you ever go back there? You're like the deer are just right there. And it's like, yeah, it's quite charming, you know? All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Just give us a thumbs up on YouTube. That really helps us out a lot. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IAN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletters. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Anna Wells and Jeff Ranke, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and I will see you next week.